Good afternoon, everybody. We'll start welcoming you to Gov School this afternoon, and we'll get started here in about 3 or 4 minutes. Good afternoon. I'm going to start welcoming everybody to our Gov School session this afternoon. We'll get started here. Usually start about 2 after the hour. For those coming in, we're just now getting started. We'll get checking audio, checking everything, making sure we're okay, and we'll get started here in just a minute. So I want to start welcoming everyone to our Gov School this afternoon. My name is Mark Knowles, and I'm one of the founders of Gov Directions here today to chit chat with you. This is going to be an open session. When you first come into the room, you do have your recording. You're on mute. If you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, feel free to do so. I do ask that you keep the mute just for the background for everyone else's enjoyment as we go along. But if you have a question, you can also pose a question in the chat box or tell me a little bit more about your searches that you're looking for in the bids. And I'll use some of that in the reference. A number of you went in and actually completed the indicators of success. That's what I want to focus on today, and how to use that effectively along with new technology and expansive technology. It's just getting everyday use now. I'm going to focus on that today. So what's been probably about 30 to 40 minutes together, and then I'll give you a chance to do some questions for those that are on YouTube Live. This is recorded automatically. It'll be available to you right after. And you can go there and you can actually subscribe there. It's free to subscribe, and it'll alert you when there are recordings that can be there for your future assistance. Try to do that for you. We learned early on that it wasn't just about the find for the bid. That's the big part of it, and that's what we have done most of our operations. We started back in 1998 and launched Gov Directions in 2006 and RFP delivery in 2021. And it's all services to really help you really dig in there and find the listings that are available. Some 50,000 active RFPs and bids just about every day. About 5,000 new ones are issued, about 5,000 of them awarded. And we found that, after first identifying that the next step was really matching them to you and making sure that you get the right ones that you are looking for. And in fact, I've always worked with the concept of an indicator or indicator. I just like to determine indicators of success. So keep it positive as you go in and looking at items that you actually have an opportunity of winning. And so that you're not just spinning your wheels. I'm not one of those. I know there's a lot of folks on YouTube channels that kind of profess it's a numbers game that just keep pushing, and bidding. I'm not one of those guys. I really believe that you need to pinpoint and you need to isolate. Otherwise, you can be quickly overwhelmed and frustrated, and you wait instead of wasting your time on those bids that you just don't have an opportunity to win. Focusing on those that you do. And you might say, well, how do you know if you don't have the opportunity? And that's because the opportunity presents itself in the right way to you, and you'll learn. I have one of the slides I always use is, it sings a song in the back of your head, that the Coldplay song, "You're the one that I wanted to find." And if it doesn't say that to you, then it is time to really move on to you get that to get that feeling, that song playing. And I'm going to share some of that to you and how to do that. So the use of indicators of success and those in allowing that to help drive the bids that you actually respond to has become, I think, more important and somewhat easier to do as long as you you tame the dragon. That's kind of the theme I use here. Of course, we all really like that movie of training the dragon, but I use some of those concepts to really talk about how we can use AI tools to tame the right way and trained in the right way to present to you the opportunities that really match you. I hear frequently that AI is somewhat GPTs are kind of like calculators. I actually used that reference before in my past, but it's not really that type of a tool. It's more really truly interactive with you, and training is important, and prompting is important. And so it becomes, I think, even more essential that you learn it yourself on how to actually to handle it. Otherwise, it does stick in there, but it provides information that potentially can gobble you up, and you want to have that happen either. You want to have it in a very useful way that's there for you. So I'm going to drive through some of those there today. So thank you all for coming, and we'll get started here. I usually go through on a slide to kind of start us off, and today I want to welcome you here to Gov School, and the theme is the indicators of success, and I'm going to talk about how to tame the dragon in the process. And as mentioned, this is a function of Gov School, which is one of our services at Gov Directions. And I'm going to start with this slide here today. Sometimes I use this slide. It's supposed to be hard. Everybody would do this. Today, I'm going to use this one. Being scared is fine, but staying scared, that's the problem. So when you first approach AI, this is a quote from the movie Gobber. Okay, so if you when you first approach, you start using AI, it's okay to be a little, not quite understanding. Look at me. I've passed now for 60, and I'm learning new tools and using new technologies. You can't be afraid of it. It can be scary at first, but you got to really step in there and learn it. And then you will find that it is helpful and useful, and making sure that you use it the right way. But once again, being scared is fine, but staying scared, that's the problem. And so as we step into it, one of the things I want to talk to you today about is our purpose and what we're going to do in this 30 minutes to make it very productive. But we want to first identify the actual structure of an RFP. I like to always start that so we know what we're actually dealing with. And you'll find I'm try to do the same thing over and over again. So it's important to understand the foundation first. I'll go through that somewhat in an expert way, where we have some other videos that you can watch and you can use those. Okay, I'm going to actually walk through briefly through each section that's really important, because it's to understand what you're looking at can then drive to how you actually respond and actually use the tools to make them more productive for you. Because then I'm going to step in and actually use an actual RFP. As you know, if you've watched any of my classes, I'm a big believer in experiential learning. That means it's not lecturing. It's more about getting in there and understanding by using actual bids, actual RFPs, responses, and it's the best way to learn. And I'm going to do that to help us really identify each section. That can then help us understand how to train this dragon. And I'll learn how to use the Gov Directions. We'll try to walk through our RFP writing GPT so that you can determine how to effectively use that. And you're going to learn very quickly. Anything we do is designed to keep it simple. Okay, even our RFP writing GPT is specifically designed that it's simple in, simple out, and keeping very things to the basics is the best way to really even improve and become more complex. So you can use it for a response that's a 2 or 3 page response to 200-page response, and by effectively training and use it in the right way. As we go through, we're also going to talk about very specifically about the contracting instruments. I'm not going to dive in all the differences today, Just know that we have these basic ones there for you to fully understand that every time you look at a document that's issued by the government, it's not automatically an invitation to bid or a request for proposal. It could be presented to you at other forums, but all of them are actually designed to take you from, from the introduction to the actual completion of a project and building in within the concept of the theory of the firm. Why do we actually contract with each other? Is because you have a specialty, you have a expertise. They need that, and they're trying to make sure that you have the information in order to respond to them and help them accomplish their goals and their objectives efficiently. And not only that, but the government, unlike the private sector, they have a responsibility for fairness and equity and inclusiveness, and it's driven to them by the policymakers at all levels of government. And that sort of it helps lay the foundation. And you want to make sure everybody's treated somewhat as fair as possible. And so they'll issue these documents to help control that marketplace. Request for information, basically asking you about if there's even really a market exists to help us. And if so, give us some information about your company. A request for qualifications. What makes you qualified to assist us? Or here are the qualifications we're looking for. Do you have those? Sources sought. Here is their market once again in the particular area or the specific product. And if so, how do we actually engage with you? And then more of, we know exactly what we want. Just give us a quote. Maybe we know what we want and we're pretty precise. You have a little bit more information here. Give us a bid, request for bids, a little bit more thoroughness. And then, of course, what I always like to refer to, my favorite, is the request for proposal. And you might ask why, because this is the one that actually lets you shine, lets you show what you know. You really are able to express to them. They come to the table with an understanding of what they potentially are looking for. Maybe sometimes they don't even know what they're looking for, but they have an idea, an objective of trying to accomplish, and then you can help them explain your methods, your deliverables, what you're able to accomplish, what makes you credentialed to do this for them, truly the expert in the marketplace. And I always like to go back to the true definition of an RFP, because this is important. Oftentimes, and I'm going to actually try to help you today, use AI to tell you when something's perhaps not for you. Okay, but a request for proposal by nature is a solicitation. That means they want you to respond. They want the market to respond in a competitive way. If they're going to make a purchasing decision, oftentimes it's an elaborate decision-making process, years in the making. And when you're seeing the final product, the RFP or the invitation to bid, that's really the last stage before they actually make an acquisition. And so it's been a lot of thought process put into it. So they want you to take it seriously. It's almost always through a bidding process, meaning that you're competing with others. So it's important that you understand how to present yourself in the right way. One of my favorite quotes by Vice President Harris, when she was running for office that last time, she said that, you have to define yourself. Don't let somebody else define. I think her father may have said that. And then back in President Reagan's time, when we had General Alexander Haig, he said something very similar. It's like, you have to define your capabilities to sell yourself. And so this bidding process, you have to pay attention to what the government is actually seeking, so that you can step in there and then give them the information they need in order to make the decision to hire you. So as a part of that bidding process, that solicitation, you need to train your technology to make sure it speaks to those points. And so that's a big emphasis I make when I'm actually helping clients draft responses, is to always call attention to the evaluation criteria, which is the overriding concern for you. What is the selection process to help you be chosen? And that's important. And I understand that this is a process where the agency or a private company, even, or a semi-quasi-public company, is interested in procuring something you have, a commodity, service, a valuable asset, and it's something they need, they want to acquire. And so they want you to take it all. They've taken it all so serious. They've got groupings of suppliers. They try to seek out a marketplace, and so therefore take it seriously and give them a business proposal that you put some thorough thought into, and not just something that you ask GPT to send you something. That's a quick way to be ruled non-responsive or not even be considered. Oftentimes they just humor you, being nice to you, but you're not even in consideration because you didn't really take them seriously. Why should they take you seriously? And so that's important that you build it the right way. I saw one the other day, a response that somebody asked me to take a look at right before they submitted, and we had like an hour left, and they didn't even pay attention to any of the any of the forms that were required. And the GPT basically it just said they were in compliance with everything. That's not what the government wanted. They want signed documents. They wanted it's not like you and I are dealing with the private sector where we can just shake hands sometimes. They have a thorough process. They have to check off everything, make sure it's done in the right way. And that's not likely to change. I know we're moving quickly and escalating quickly, but it's not likely to change, folks. Governments have rules and laws in place, and it takes years and years to make any change to the laws that are there and the documents that are required. And even now we see paper format required, wet signature still required all over the country. This is not something that's just unique to one agency and so forth, but it's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of agencies that still not even moved past the wet signature. And so it understand that while this technology is there, it takes years and years and years to be fully implemented in the local government. It's the incrementalism is the concept, and it just takes a while. And so as you go into, but the good news is, we have come to a basically a theory of school and education, how we actually want to structure these documents. And it doesn't matter which one you're looking at, they must all of them have the same format. As one of my other lives, I actually teach at a graduate school level how to prepare RFPs to future contracting writers who write those RFPs you respond to. So when we talk about this to them, we always first start off with the stress and understanding the ABCs of writing: accuracy, brevity, clarity. And when the government is preparing the document, it's their responsibility. When you're preparing a response, that responsibility transfers to you as a company, and you're going to be the one telling them the information they need. So it's important that you're also accurate, brief, and clear in your response. And so there's a match of the two, and the more that matches, the more likely you're going to win that bid. And I always point out, the number one way to win a bid is to follow instructions. The number one way to lose a bid is to not follow instructions. Okay, so that's the basics of all of it, and you will find that if you just follow the instructions, you got a very high chance of winning. But the typical parts of an RFP, when you really look at these, you see the statement of work. And this is really one of the most important parts. And I'm going to keep on my old side. I'm not going to go back to just yet to the Dragons quote, because this one I really like. That scope of work, it really needs to say to you, you're the one that I want to find. If it doesn't, move on. Okay, it's usually a paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs at most. It really gives you the purpose of their work. And if you got a good match, and this really sings that song, it's for you to go to. And then you're looking at technical specs and the schedule and the list of deliverables and the contract terms. That's your profit center. Making sure you fully understand that. You get off on the profit on the contract somehow, that's where you lose your money. And you don't want to have that happen. Okay? The format of the proposal, how you respond to the document, the qualifications and experience. What are they actually looking for? What are they seeking? Not only from the company, but from you as an individual, and selling that in the right way. And then the cost breakdown. How are you actually going to break down the cost and respond to the cost? And then, of course, evaluation criteria. And that's, once again, becomes more and more important when you're writing and understanding how to write in a way that you win. You're matching what you're looking for, so you get all the points. It is never just cost when you're looking at an RFP. Very rarely. In fact, one of my indicators of success is that they don't ask for the low bid. If they're asking for low bid, I just say, rule this contract out. I'll show you how to do some of that today. Okay. And then also understand all these typical parts. As we get into this day, one of the actual questions I always usually get is, governments don't really like using AI. They don't. And in fact, if you've been in school recently, you got probably penalized if you were using AI. But it is a tool, and to understand that. And so understand that, as the quote here I saw is that dragons are not a problem. Okay, they're not the problem. You're the problem. Okay, if you don't know how to train it right, you don't know how to write the right way, you don't know how to review it the right way, then you're the problem. It's not the technology. It's a challenge. Okay, it's a test of our character, their ability to really step in there and accomplish the goals and objective. And so keep that in mind as you're using this technology. If there is an issue there, that's because you haven't trained it correctly. I heard someone say once the other day that it's ghosting, putting information that's not necessarily the case, not truth. Because accuracy is very important. That's the A. Okay. And you don't want to have that anything in your RFP response is inaccurate. And that can happen if you're not reviewing it and not training it the right way. So we want to make sure we do that. And so one thing I do when we first start, before we even embark on actually going out and using any sort of GPT at all, is to understand what we're looking for. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, what you're looking at, then how do you know if it's the right response back to you to begin with? Okay, so in order to do that, I always ask clients I work with to take 10 indicators that they have, what they are looking for each time. And many of you came today and used this. I designed just a quick, simple form to kind of guide you through that, and with a quick video to kind of show you. But this is the thing that whenever you see it in there, and all 10 of them are there, it's like just really gets you excited. Okay? It's the purpose. And so I ask you to do that. But first thing you always have to do is get past that first step. Are you really ready? Are you ready to win? You want to go in there because this is the purpose of this is to win. And so we take those 10 indicators, we list them. And the questions I have on here are the exact same question. What are the 10? So you get those and you submit those. And that really kind of, it should have sent you a copy of what you said. And believe me, the ones I got today were all over the place. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's not necessarily the best thing. Some of you knew what you wanted, most of you didn't. So I'm going to actually share some of those comments with you today. But the more you refine that and start thinking about, and until you actually, go through the experiential process of helping define what you're looking at, and whenever it gives you what you said it wants, what you want, and then realize that's not really what I wanted, then you have to refine those, right? And it's important that you do that. So I have went in and I've set up in a chat, my chat. Okay, I use OpenAI. There's other Claude, other services that are somewhat similar in approach, and they can all be a little bit different. In fact, I asked recently, chat which one's better, Claude or chat, and they thought that they would be better for RFP writing. So or chat did. So I'm staying with it for right now. But who knows? We'll see what we're doing, and we actually have in progress right now writing our own. So we're working through that, really fully understanding. But these are tools that are available. This is available at a free level to a certain extent to most of us would actually use it for. I have a more advanced one, and so you might be seeing a couple more things that I have that potentially you don't have, but it should be somewhat similar. But over on the left-hand side of the chat, and I use this one because it's the one most folks tend to use. It's I think they've got 2 to 3 billion people using it at this point. But you can come in, you can actually search chats, and then you can go in and actually, excuse me, I did it wrong. I started actually search GPTs, okay, and click on the GPTs and come in, and you can search GovDirections RFP Writer, and you'll find that continue to grow in use. There's like 1,171 will pop up. 1,171 are using it right now. And so it's there for you, but it's a basic prompt. You first come here, I really would appreciate giving us a like. It doesn't take but just a second. It really helps us out. And the rankings, it gets more people exposed to it. And the more we have, of course, exposed to it, I think the better we all are at the end. But one of my defined chats, I keep them all in a specific area. And that's an important part of organization. And if you're not organized, then you have chaos. So you don't want chaos. You want to organize thought processes, and everything I do around my indicators are specifically in one chat. And so today I started a one that specifically looked at what you all had said that you were looking at for your indicators of success. And I only had about 20 at that particular time. Now there's about 50 of them have been responses since this morning. And I'm going to continue to grow those to see really what people are looking at. And so the global response patterns is that most of you are just not sure yet. You're all pretty new. I get it. I'm learning. And so what things that you're looking at in the process, and budgets and timelines and gaps, and it's those the typical points. What I always like to do when I find that when I work with my individually, but also with clients, is I say, now let's take those 10 items and let's just start weighting them and using them in a process for scoring methods. Basically a matrix of how we're actually going to measure things and whether or not we want to work on something. And then start weighting it so that what's most important to you. Like in mine, the most important thing is that my work is within about an hour of fishing stream. That's important, and because why excuse me, life work balance should be a high priority at my age. But I'm just getting to some extent. But you determine, everybody has a personal criteria that they want to meet. And you weight that and say, this is 20% of what I'm looking for. This is 30%, and so on, and get in there. But I always like to have 10 indicators with just a simple scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. And then I want something to have at least a score of about a 90 for me to consider it. Now, you may have one that's a little bit lower to get started, and I'll explain that in just a second to you. But give yourself a matrix of some sort, the expectations, whether or not right now you might want to be at a C level until you get to the A level, okay? And so think about it that way. And then maybe in 10 years experience or plus, you say, I want everything to be an A, or I'm not going to pursue it. Okay, so I want it at least that level, but at a high degree. I think it, whenever you look at the scope of work, it needs to match you 100%. It needs to really sing to your ego. And if it doesn't, then you should move on. But the actual criteria of a bid, if you can match it about 70%, I think that's a good measure. And for most of us, and you can usually get to the table to have a discussion, because a lot of times the government is not even really sure what they're asking for anyway, so they may trim some of that as you go through. But give yourself a scale, give yourself a matrix, and then take a look at it. And in mine, I have it set up so that if it's 90 to 100 points, and it really is the one I wanted to find. Okay, and so this could help you build that evaluation. So you build your indicators first. And here is particularly the one I use for my review. I took some compensation and classification work. Okay, this is something I do in my career. I've been trained to do it. I've won and worked on some 400 projects in 34 states, either as a sub or as a prime, with those organizations across the United States. And so as a part of that, going, first of all, the very old days were just even finding the projects was just about impossible. But now it's somewhat simple to kind of find them. And then the second part is actually evaluating, determine if I'm really interested in those. And so I have my evaluation criteria, and whether or not they're and the government has its evaluation criteria. So here's some of the ones. I'm going to skip back to the beginning and how I started this, so you can see that. And I'm going to show you how I add to them. But my primary my indicators is that it's in the Southeast United States, something I don't really want to travel as much anymore. I don't like to work with large organizations. I want a budget of about 50,000 at least, so that it makes sense for me to go in. I want to prefer a city or county government. If it's another, I might consider it, but I want a local government. And I want you typically work with a finance department official in some way. I don't want anything that's longer than 6 months. It has to have a due date at least 10 days out, because I need to think about it before I actually apply for it. And I want remote work. I should say remote work. And then no more than 2 meetings. I don't want to go on location more than 2 times. And I certainly don't want to do any projects that have to do with any benefit reviews. And so as a part of that, I gave it a traditional, just a breakdown of give 10 points for each one of those measures. It's more measures you have, the less important it becomes to actually weight them. And you can put them in there and be just as, you may not think of the same way, but that's the way I think about it. I can give them equal credits as I'm taking a look at it. And then on my rating tier, it's like 90 to 100 is you're the one I wanted to find. 80 to 89, it's a great chance I'm going to win this one. And then 70 to 89 average, but if it's below 70, I'm just going to pass. I'm not even going to review it, because I don't want to have to go through, there's actually, I think I've got about 6 I want us to look at together right now that I haven't looked at yet, but I don't have to, I want to have to read every single one of them to begin with. Now, eventually I may want to. I'm definitely going to review it if I'm going to apply for it all the way through. But initially I want to do a quick analysis every day, potentially come and see which ones should I be looking at. So I develop an executive profile for myself, an evaluation scorecard. Okay, the executive profile is basically a short review of what I'm looking, or what the document is actually looking for. And I tell it typically what I'm asking for. I want to know if there's any insurance requirements, what are the things important? Is there bonding requirement, things of this nature? Okay, here's the things that I like to see. Who's the key contacts, the submission deadline, any form requirements, and any specific flags that should be listed. And before I drop in the actual documents, and then it gives me a review of each of those. Okay, and then I get my indicators and a recommendation scorecard. And on this one, like, for example, it was perfect. And I'm going to show you how I actually did that. These are some I've done in the past as I look through them. And then an executive summary of the ones I want to review, but an indicators checklist of how I actually rank out. Here's my indicators of success for this one. It's actually in the Southeast. I get all 10 points, and steps in. What I don't get is they don't know what the budget is, so they think it's in this number. But I can help out at this point with my own human knowledge and say, yeah, this is probably the budget I need to. If it's got these kind of requirements, and I'm going to help out a little bit, because chat can only interpret what you tell it to interpret. Okay, it doesn't. So you have to do understand that it can't just go everywhere and do everything. And nothing can quite do that. But if you give it the information, it grows the information, it reviews all the data you've collected, and then it gets better and better and more precise as you do that. So keeping that chat together and let them know how much you actually bid on this one will help in the future in determining what a speculative budget is. Okay, so I don't want to discount it too much. But this is a 94 out of 100 with a really high rating. So it's something that specifically, it's just York County out South Carolina, would be almost perfect for me to actually pursue. And so this kind of data becomes really important. Okay, so what I would do typically is I would take, and so you would choose first, you define your indicators of success. Second, give yourself a weighting system, a matrix system of some sort, and Chat will help you with that. And then you want to do an executive profile. Really, what are you looking for? And then a ranking of those individual bids. And so I come in and I'm going to pull in some documents that I just pulled down. And here we go, RP. And so there's about, I think there might be about four. Oh, wait, this is the one I want to do. Drag and drop. And you can do, I think, around 10 documents at one time on most packages. Okay. And so let's just go in. Here's the ones that I wanted to look at. And as it's doing that, I'm going to get my prompt ready. And prompting is so important. I always use please and thank you, but I understand you're not supposed to do that. And it actually is wasting lots of space and time and energy for all of us who do these cordial things. But please take a look. Maybe I'll give it more review. These RFPs against my indicators of success. And provide an analysis. Okay, I might go a little bit more, be more restricted and say comparative analysis. Which one should I pursue? And your prompts become really important. I have a whole prompt list we'd be glad to send to you. They gives you the best prompts. So here's our first one. So it's giving me a ranking against the two. Yeah. And so I have my 10 indicators. Okay. So right away, two of them are compared. I definitely should not go after the one in judicial branch. I only get 49. So I'm going to drop that one almost immediately. And that's probably, I'll throw it in there kind of as a way to illustrate it's not a city or county, it's a large organization, it's got multiple, it just wasn't there. And just so I took two that allowed me to think through them very quickly in order to know which one of these two pursue. And so I'm not even going to waste my time on the first one and then just move to the second one and start taking a look at it in more detail. And so in this particular case here, it does give me an executive summary and recommendation, which is what I've asked it to do. It's trained to do this for me. And then it's moved on to the next one, this one in the city of Greenville. And it's also given me another one that this potentially is one I should actually seek out pursue. And so I might want to say, show me so you have to be, once again, I mentioned earlier that you have to be disciplined and you have to tell it what to do. Okay. Show the rankings. And just like any dragon, it can go and do what it wants to if you don't keep it trained. For the rankings for all of the RFPs. So given the prompts, telling it the next step, how to move forward is, there we go. Okay. And these are the three new ones. I've actually threw the York County back in there again. It still keeps coming out really high for me to actually pursue that one. And so I'm going to put a lot more emphasis on it. It's going to help me to decide. I'm going to budget my staffing to make sure that we can get in there and get this bid or this RFP and respond to it in the right way. And so it's going to help drive some major decisions that I have to make, but I'm going to drop this one because that would be a complete waste of my time. And if I had not gone through this process, I might spend a couple hours looking at that RFP that could be more valuable used somewhere else. And I think that's important to do that, use it there. So I have the ranking summary there. And so I'm going to go ahead and do an executive profile for the top two. Yeah. Helping along, going through the right area. So I can once again understand really what they're seeking. Okay, and I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna actually start in my process of using my drives, and this has become a key document for me and just share with others. And so the next step in working in providing responses, bringing in others, your co-workers, your team, to understand how they can all best fit that, or if there's a part in here that I need to make sure that I Part of it I don't have potentially, maybe doing a salary study. I don't really do that part. I might want to contract that or subcontract that part out. And so understanding that would be the first step in this. And then, the next step forward is you and actually it's going to start telling you what it wants to do. And so, yeah, I might want to just see what a tailored pitch letter looks like. And so go ahead and let's give us that. Okay. And move it forward. Now, at the same time, once it does that, it gives me some ideas. I'm going to step back and I'm actually going to say, but focus specifically on the evaluation criteria. Remember, introducing that concept of the evaluation criteria is something that's probably unique to government contracting, and how fit. Okay. And by this time, I've placed in potentially future past RFPs that I've won or that I responded to, my capability statement. I've given a lot of information that can help me in my process of preparation of information. And so now it's restructured the letter and it's done exactly what I wanted. I got a more thorough letter and I'm able to come in there and actually to tie what I'm doing specifically to the actual RFP itself before I start moving in. It's going to start moving me into the next phase of it. So here we are at the 35-minute mark. I told you, I promised you I'd keep you on schedule. And I wanted to stop and see if there are questions, if there's comments that you want to have as I go back to my slide there. But when you're going through the indicators, you make them personal, you make them rewarding, you use them consistently, always stay and use the same ones. And then if you do need to change as you learn, change and be consistent going forward, you weight them, tell what's the importance. You analyze every RFP using the same method and you'll get better responses. When you're training, make sure you're forceful and direct in how you approach things. You choose the right prompts. You tell it exactly what you want. You make sure it pays attention to the items that we discussed. In your indicators of success, your evaluation criteria, and you remind the systems. You never be in a rush with it. Always set it aside and think about it and improve the structure of your responses. Review the results with your colleagues and make sure the results are the flavor of your organization, not the flavor of the GPT. It's also important. And introducing that, one way I can really pick up on responses that are just almost solely generated by GPT is they're going to have that green check mark in there. They're going to have the phone in there, these images. I have fun with them here, but you don't want to put that in a professional proposal. They want a business proposal. So one thing I almost always do right at the first, I said, this is a business proposal, no fancy graphics, standard points, standard document preparation. And you even can tell it in a certain style, an element of style, and make sure it follows that. But keep it in a business proposal, but personalize it though, and use it in such a way that it fits you and your organization, uses your language, but always make it professional. And as you go along, you really are going to understand that the only source of knowledge is experience. And you got to get in there and you got to practice and use it and understand how to use it better and better in practice. You don't always just take the first response it gives you, help it understand you better. And it doesn't matter which AI tool you're using. It can help you improve your writing skills, shouldn't replace your writing skills, just improvement. And always use actual RFPs as you even choose to practice. And I'm going to leave you with this one final quote. Dragon Rider knows that the sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning. And so this, just expresses that as you step into this, you're going to learn things constantly, and always consider that a new beginning as you go into it, and change if you need to. I know a lot of you go out there and you're doing responses in sort of a middle person concept, and you're using subcontractors, and some of that might force changes in the way you approach things. And so be aware of that as you do. So, thank you for coming today, but I'll see if there's any questions. If you do have a question, you can raise your hand. Technically speaking, I'm going to go off the YouTube so you can more comfortable. Understand that. So everybody who joined us in our YouTube today, I do certainly appreciate you coming, and please make sure to use the subscribe